Welcome to the Pat Dooley Show, Episode 4, Attack of the Clones. Today we're going to talk about the Florida-Tennessee game as well as their upcoming game with the Gators. Be joined a little bit later by Chris Doering. You know, Chris Doering had a pretty good game against Kentucky a long time ago. Wow, it's amazing when you think about how long ago that was. Was it 16 years ago? Wow, that is amazing. And we'll go through our lists and 3 things, and we'll also do, of course, our Dr. Football segment, either or with Chris Doering as well. But let's just talk a little bit about the Florida-Tennessee game. Obviously, Florida didn't play its best game. Tim Tebow didn't play his best game. Florida had a lot of issues, although apparently they're not supposed to bring up when guys are sick. That's been forbidden by the Tennessee Mafia. But, you know, the Gators just weren't clicking on all cylinders because they didn't have to. There was no point in that game where you looked at it and went, wow, Florida's in trouble. They were never in trouble. They were never going to lose the game, and they went very conservative, a little tighter than I would have liked to have seen them go, but they did get the win, and that's what really matters. And, of course, the Gators move on and face Kentucky. Florida has beaten Kentucky 22 times. I put this line in my column. I wonder how many of you caught this. I said everybody knows where they were the last time Florida lost to Kentucky. They're at a Monkees concert. And, of course, some people say, wait a minute, the Monkees were in the – no, the Monkees reunited in 1986, and they were on tour. Aha, didn't know that, did you? But that's the last time Florida lost to Kentucky. Does that play into the game? No, of course not. Does it play into it for the seniors that they've never beaten Florida? Yeah, I think there's an issue there. Does it play into it for Florida that they've never known the taste of losing? I don't think so. I think they know that this is a good Kentucky team. It's not a great one, but it is a good one, and Rich Brooks is a very good coach. He kind of convinced me of that. I'll tell you a story back in 2005, which would have been Urban's first season. Urban, after the game, they were up 49-7. Kentucky came back on them a little bit in the second half, mainly because Josh Portis was in the game kicking the ball around. And after the game, I asked Urban about it. He said, I knew that team would come back. That's a good coach. And I went, really? Rich Brooks? Are you kidding me? I didn't believe him. I thought we totally were going to disagree on that. But look what Rich Brooks has done since then. 3 straight bowl wins. Okay, they were an AutoZone Liberty Bowl and a couple of Music City Bowls. But there's 3, you know, for Kentucky, they ought to erect a statue to him outside the stadium. He's got a good program going. Even with the loss of Jeremy Jarman, they're off to a good start. Now, I know beating Miami of Ohio and Louisville is not great, but it's better than not beating them. So I think Florida's going to have a fight up there, especially with where Florida is offensively with their situation at wide receiver and with all the injuries and flu that they have. Oh, that's right. We're not supposed to mention the flu. I forgot. You know, the game I'll never forget at Kentucky was, I think it was 2003 when Chris Leak had his first start as a Gator, and it was hot. It's not supposed to be hot there. It's never supposed to be hot in Lexington, and it was so hot. I was drenched literally after the game because they don't have air conditioning in the press box. And you know, it was a great game for Chris Leak, though. Everybody knows the story about that. The round mound of touchdowns. Jared Lorenzen, one of my favorite players to watch, didn't get it done. But watch out for this Kentucky team this week, especially Trevard Lindley. Really good player. If you look at it last year, Tebow threw 2 picks during the regular season, one of them to Trevard Lindley. All right, we're going to talk about the 3 things we learned last weekend. And number 1, there were only 2 stories last week in Gainesville. 1, Florida kills Tennessee. 2, they don't. Who won and lost the game? It really didn't have anything to do with anything. It was very disappointing to see some of the stuff that was written afterwards and still talked about. But the one thing I've learned about all this is the reason that the Tennessee coach is still mouthing off in the middle of the week is because they play Ohio this week. Okay? Nobody cares about them right now. They're under the radar again. Nobody's going to care about him probably for the rest of the season unless he keeps mouthing off. So don't expect that stuff to end. The number 2 thing we learned this week is that Southern Cal is the opposite of David. Southern Cal doesn't beat teams that are supposed to be better than them because they don't play very many of them, if any. I can't remember the last time Southern Cal was an underdog. But what they do is they lose to the Davids. Southern Cal's the best big game team you want out there. They're the worst little game team. Everybody knew this year it was going to happen again. When? Well, it didn't take long this year. Washington knocks them off. And the number 3 thing we learned this week, FSU and Miami are back for now. Let's wait until they've played, 4 games until we declare them back. Sure, FSU looked great against Brigham Young, but Brigham Young turned the ball over a bunch, and they're not that good. I said this all along. I think Oklahoma was devastated with the Bradford injury. I'm not making excuses for them, but I think it killed their team mentally, and that had a lot to do with why Brigham Young won. Plus, it goes back to one of my 10 commandments of college football. Don't take too much from first games, and don't take too much from one game to the next. Every game's its own game. I think that's the second commandment. Florida State sure looked bad against Jack State, but not against Brigham Young. Those games had nothing to do with each other. And Miami really looked good right now. I like the way Ja'Cory Harris is playing. I mean, you got a Heisman Trophy candidate there, even though he's only started 3 games in his career. candidate, I said. There's about 90 of those. But let's see how Miami does against Virginia Tech and Oklahoma the next 2 weeks. Then I'll be ready to say they're back. Nobody's back because they go 2-0. Nobody's back because they go 2-1. You're back when you're back, and I'll tell you when you're back. Now we're going to take a break, come back with our interview with Chris Doering. You remember him, former Florida wide receiver. All right, welcome back to the Pat Dooley Show. I'm here with my special guest today, Chris Doering. Of course, it's Kentucky week, and we can't have anybody but Chris Doering. Did you ever catch any other passes?
I don't think I did. I mean, that was funny because that was one of my first real games that I contributed in, and most people, you know, they link my name to Kentucky, and really I caught, after that game, 29 more touchdowns.
That was the only one anybody remembers, though, although the one I remember, corner post route against FSU to set the SEC record.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites. I had bookend career moments in my mind. At the Lexington game there in '93, 2 catches for touchdowns, and one of them the game winner, and then, of course, my last career game in the Swamp with the record setter. So I couldn't have been a better story.
Now, when you go back to that game, I'm sure it runs through your mind every once in a while, just all the stuff that led up to it. I mean, I think a lot of people don't remember that Dean and Werfel combined for 7 picks in that game.
Yeah.
They shouldn't even been in the game. It might have been the last time they were really in a game, but against Florida. But when you guys get back on the Harrison Houston had the big kick return. When you get back on the field for that series, what's going through your mind?
You know, it really was not a sense of panic at all. Even though we had played miserably the entire night, 7 picks, as you mentioned, quarterbacks being shuffled in and out. We felt like we could move the ball against them. We had moved it and made mistakes. So if we eliminated those mistakes, we felt like we had a chance. But you touched on Harrison Houston. The return there was probably the biggest play in that drive, setting us up with good field position to be able to go down the field. And then, you know, Eric Rett made some good plays on that drive, and it was just a great team effort.
Yeah, it was, and obviously the play before they threw you the ball and just missed.
Yeah.
And if you'd caught it, we might not. Chris Doering might have been an afterthought.
That was the ironic thing about it. We ran the same play the play before. I got held at the line of scrimmage, and Danny threw it. I made almost a great one-handed catch. It probably would have been a highlight type catch, but we would have run out of time and wouldn't have been able to ultimately, you know, have another shot at the end zone like we did.
And I mean, where were the safeties on that play?
They played 2-man, and if you look at our receivers, out to my right was Jack Jackson. To my left, on the other side of the formation, was Aubrey Hill in the slot. Harrison Houston in the slot, and Willie Jackson on the other side. So of the 4, probably I'm the least threatening of all.
Still are.
Yeah, still are. Danny did a good job of looking to Jack and kind of pumping down the right sideline. The safety split, and I had a linebacker covering me, man, underneath, and you know,
it didn't work out.
Didn't work out well for them, no.
And you got into it with the fans a little bit after that.
I did. You know, I went back, and it was funny. The other day, I was doing some stuff for the SEC networks, and they had a highlight of that, and they showed me after the game, or after the play, talking with the fans. I said, let's cut the tape before that. That's not the kind of sportsmanship we want to promote. So I was a little immature at the time.
Well, Florida could probably use Chris Doering right now, a wide receiver, with the issues they have out there right now. You obviously stay with the team, follow the team. Big fan of Urban Myers, I know. And when you watched that team Saturday against Tennessee, what went through your mind?
You know, it was a little bit of wasn't all that inspiring of a performance, but it was a victory nonetheless. And I think that fans have gotten spoiled here. You know, all the way back to Coach Spurrier, and what ultimately led him to leave was the expectation levels being too high. I think wins weren't necessarily good enough, and even though we were able to get the victory the other day, it wasn't in the kind of fashion that we would have liked. But you got to give credit to Monty Kiffin, or to Monty, for the defensive plan he came up with, and certainly their players, 1 to 11 on the defense, they got as good as anybody in the conference.
Yeah, in fact, I wrote about that in the Saturday Gainesville Sun. You can read it at Gatorsports.com, which you're already on if you're watching this, that Monty Kiffin didn't really lay down the blueprint for how to defend Florida. If you got an Eric Berry and you spend all summer trying to defend a team, and you got really good defenders, and the other team's trying, you know you're not going to do anything stupid to make mistakes, so the other team's not going to have to score. Yeah, and here's a great trivia, or not trivia, but stat for you. Florida actually gained more yards against Tennessee this year than they did last year.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not buying into that whole blueprint theory, but I'll tell you my favorite Chris Doering story. I'll embarrass him here. And it's not the night you came over for my 50th birthday.
That was fun, though.
That was fun. Anybody brings Danny Werfel to the party and a bottle of Crown, you know it's a good day. But I go to cover their. Remember the Swamp Shooters?
Yep.
Used to have that team?
Yep.
And they asked me to come over and do a story on it. So I go over there, and I'm about done, and they're playing their game, and Kerwin Bell says, hey, we're going to call timeout. I want you to pretend like you're leaving. As you're leaving, step in bounds. I'm going to throw you the ball, take a 3-pointer. That'll be funny. So I do. I've got flip-flops on. I get the ball. I step in bounds. go to take the shot. Doering comes out of nowhere and slaps it, just whacks it into the stands. And I'm like, dude, he goes, I'm a competitor, man.
Ultra competitive.
You wouldn't even let your buddy get a shot off.
Well, and along the same lines with the swamp shooters, we played one night, and this girl on the other team draining 3 after 3. Finally, I got tired of it, so I blocked her shot, and I caught a bunch of crap from the guys after that.
Chris is one of the great stories in Florida athletics, of course, being a walk-on and becoming a star and going on playing a lot in the NFL. I mean, when's your pension kick in on that?
I'm getting close now. It's kind of a double-edged sword because your insurance runs out after 5 years, but after 5 years, you're eligible to start collecting some of the NFL stuff, benefits as well. So they've taken good care of us, and I'm excited about being able to cash in a little bit on that.
It's a good thing you didn't play in like the 50s and 60s.
That's true. Those guys, they're hurting.
Well, obviously you're in a lot of things. Just let the viewers, I guess I want to say listeners, readers, whatever, but let the viewers know. I know you got the mortgage business going.
Yeah, I got the mortgage.
You got the radio going.
Got the radio still here in Gainesville, NorCal, and doing some TV with ESPN's regional coverage, doing some CSS work. I'll be in Starkville, Mississippi on October 3rd for Georgia Tech, Mississippi State.
You know where I'll be? On my couch.
That's the off week for the Gators.
Baby.
That's right.
My favorite day. Some people like Christmas, some people like Thanksgiving, 4th of July. Me, Gators open.
I've spent open dates with you before too, with the multiple TVs set up.
And the chili. Yeah. The chili, the $50 chili going. Well, that's going to do it for our segment with Chris. He's going to be back in a little bit to do either or. But right now it's time to look at my latest list. All right, it's time to do our weekly list, and I like to do this every week. We rank things 1 through 5. This week, who are Florida's biggest rivals right now? Not last year, not next year, not 10 years ago, but right now. Number 5, believe it or not, I'm putting LSU in there. And the reason is because of what happened 2 years ago when Florida went there. It was a hard-fought game, tough game. They had Tebow's cell phone number. They were bugging him. And everybody's been pointing to the LSU game more than any game this year as the big game for Florida. So I'm sneaking LSU in there at number 5. Number 4, we have the mighty Miami Hurricanes. Florida didn't even play them this year, but they're still the venom. They're still the hatred. Miami hates Florida, I think, more than Miami hates anybody else, even more than FSU. So even though Florida didn't play them again until 2013, I'm putting Miami number 4 on the list. Number 3, it's Georgia. Yeah, I know. Georgia should be everybody's number 1 rival, and a lot of people feel that way. I was there for Lindsey Scott. I still feel like it's a huge rivalry, and we all know it is, but some things have happened to change things. So, because number 2 now, in my opinion, right now as we sit here today, is Tennessee. With all the stuff that went on with Tennessee's coach in the last few weeks, with this feeling that Tennessee won a game that they lost, they went home with L's on the side of their helmets instead of T's. That's the last thing I saw. The bottom line is I think Tennessee is back up there, back ahead of Georgia. A year ago at this time, Georgia might be number 1, not Florida State. Who is number 1? Florida State. And I feel that way just because you got to really hate your rivals, and both teams really hate each other. And I think Florida fans root hard against FSU in every game they play. I still think FSU right now, just slightly, it's like 1A, 1B, and then the others. But how many schools have 3 or 4 rivals? Not very many. When you think about it, what's Auburn got? Alabama. I mean, what's Tennessee got? They got 2, Alabama and Florida. Very few schools have 3 and even 4, and I think Florida has 4 rivals when you include Miami. All right, so that's the list of Florida's 5 biggest rivals right now, right this second as I stand here today. It may change in a week. Who knows? Right now we're going to take a break, come back with Either Or, that segment where we decide 4 big questions this week with Chris Doering. Okay, it's time to play our weekly segment of Either Or with Chris Doering, former Florida wide receiver, former Redskin, former Colt, former what else?
You got enough time to name all of them? You'd probably be better off naming the ones I wasn't on the team.
You weren't on the Chargers,
Never
right?
played for the Chargers or the Bucks.
Yeah. Or the Jaguars for a small bit.
I was there and got drafted there.
Yeah, exactly. Should have kept him. Look where they are now. And they're one of our Either Or questions. Let's go to the first one, though. If Lane Kiffin and Lindsey Scott are both drowning in a lake, which one do you toss a life preserver to?
Ooh, you know what? I'd probably toss it to Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is probably less of a threat to me. Lindsey Scott ruined my childhood, so I think that one probably scarred me much more deeply than Lane Kiffin has.
Well, I know Lindsey Scott really well. Got to know him when I was covering Jacksonville. Wasn't any more happy than you were on that day, but I like Lindsey Scott. He's a good guy. He's been through some tough times. I'd probably throw it to him.
I'll tell you, after the '94 championship game against Alabama, when I caught the game winner at the end, first guy to come interview me is Buck Ballou. And I said, man, I hated you when I was a kid. He's actually a good guy as well.
He is a good guy.
So.
It's funny because I saw him in the tunnel going out there, and I said, you know what's funny? Chris had a dream the night before he was going to catch the winning touchdown pass, didn't you?
Yeah.
See, so we both ran into that night. Number 2, who do you think would get more boos in Lexington, you or Rick Pitino?
Oh, Rick Pitino is probably a much bigger name than what Chris Doering is, but I will say that people put me in the same kind of group as Christian Leitner, so that's not bad company there. I'll take that.
Yeah, well, that's not bad at all. But
it's funny. We had somebody on from Lexington the other day, and he continued to say how much they hate me up there. So that's
right?
the biggest compliment you can have.
It is, absolutely. I didn't think they still remember you.
They do for some reason.
You know, it's 16 years ago.
16 years ago this September 11th.
Is that right? It was a September 11th?
September 11th,
so
1993.
Some good memories of September 11th.
Yes.
You know, Robbie Andrews' wife was born on that day.
And Chris Harry's kid
That's
as
right.
well.
That's right, because she was born, I remember that. Okay, number 3. Which will happen first? Jacksonville's NFL franchise leaves town, or Florida Georgia moves to Atlanta every other year?
I don't think Florida Georgia is going to move anytime soon. I think the Jacksonville move is probably pretty imminent, especially with the way the team started and the lack of interest. But I do believe, should Wayne Weaver actually draft Tim Tebow, might be the saving grace for that city.
That's going to save it, because if your backup quarterback selling your tickets, you're in great shape.
Yeah.
Right. I think they're in trouble. I really do. That crowd the other night was about 35,000.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, we all knew Jacksonville was a great city for football. College football.
Not pro football, but the problem is they've never embraced the college game. Tom Coughlin always tried to separate the Jaguar fans from the Florida or FSU fans, and that was the biggest mistake they could have made.
But they always assume that people from Gainesville will go.
Yeah.
People from Gainesville aren't going to go there.
Unless you loaded up with Gators.
That's right, exactly. And even when they did that, it didn't work.
Yeah.
What did? They cut Mike Peterson, Fred Taylor. How's that working out for them?
Not
well. 0-2. All right, the last question on either or. Who's a bigger PK Young alumni? Doug Dickey? I guess it should be alumnus. Doug Dickey or Travis McGriff?
Ooh, golly, both guys great players. I'm going to have to probably give it to Doug Dickey because he gets the edge for being a former head coach and athletic director as well. Travis, his story is still unwritten. Maybe he'll go on to great heights like that as well, though.
Yeah, Doug Dickey also is in the College Football Hall of Fame.
That's true.
I'm with you on that. That's a good one. All right, appreciate Chris Doering for coming in. Now let's see what's in Dr. Football's email bag. Let's see, we got a email from Gary in Alpharetta. Ooh, we're all the way up in Georgia. Dear Dr. Football, my wife used to understand that Saturday nights were about college football, but now she's grabbing the remote and going back and forth between Bravo and the Food Network. What should I do? New TV or new wife? Well, my gut feeling is that if you're that into football and you're that into ignoring your wife, you better hang on to her. I don't think you could find somebody else. Go get a TV, a second TV, put it up in your office, your bedroom, your bathroom, somewhere. It's not that hard to split the cable off, and you can watch football while she is watching Top Chef, my favorite show. That's going to do it for this edition of the Pat Dooley Show, Episode 4, Attack of the Clones. We'll be back next week. It's an open week, but we aren't going away. I want to thank everybody for clicking on and making this the most widely viewed show in the history of the web. Ha! I made that up totally, but who knows? It might be. All right, till next time, Pat Dooley. So long from the Sunshine State.